oh good, some more people are joining. If someone wants to kind of throw out a behavior that we can talk through.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. And then, so this is not going to come as a surprise, Lauren. I think the behavior we're observing the most with John is like the anxious and resistance behavior when like trying to do a new activity. Like today we were trying to do what the teachers recommended in terms of like my idea, your idea, suggestion from Piggy. Like I was trying to do the activity with John. Like I said, okay, my idea is to do, you know, flexible tracks, and then we'll do John's idea, which was, I believe, Legos or something. So I think he, in theory, agreed to it, but then like when we are doing the activity, he always has this like whiny, mommy, are we done? I want to go back to my idea, like, and he's kind of like putting the flexible tracks kind of like, but he's like really not paying attention. Like we were trying to do, I said like, I want to do the octopus flexible tracks. Like they had sent a couple weeks ago, like a shape that looked like an octopus that was built with. So I kind of put the picture like right in front of us. So he can actually like have a visual to go along with it, but like he's definitely not paying attention, and then like whining, and like I try to kind of give some more guidance to him. Look, John, this octopus seems to have like 6 tentacles or 6 legs. Like, can we build 6 legs? And like he's saying, okay, but then he's like not paying attention, and he's continuing to make like a long train track as if like we're actually making a regular train track. So I guess like the behavior, I don't know if you would call this a behavior. Like Mustafa was there actually in the kitchen, so he might tell as an independent observer what he thought, but like this constant whining and mommy, mommy, I don't want to do the 6, like, so, and then like resistant behavior. So,
and essentially not following the plan. The plan was to make an octopus track, and he was making a long track.
Yeah. And I was also using language like the fuse language. John, I'm noticing this doesn't look like a leg. Like I'm noticing this leg is very, very long. It looks like a train track, you know, rather than an octopus leg. I tried everything based on all the things that I've learned, but it just wasn't successful. And then at the end, like I kind of gave up.
So what I would say is, one thing I hear from what you're saying is you did all the right things, but he was still going with his idea. Almost at a certain point, you want to think about, I am trying so hard, and just hard stop it and say, oh, and just like what I would do in that situation is be very dramatic and just lay down and pretend like you're asleep and be like, this is not fun for me. I'll wake up when you're ready to play with me. Because you know he actually wants to play with you, because I know he does, but he wants to do his idea, but he actually does want to play with you. But you're working really hard at getting him to play with you. And when he's whining and he's like, whatever, you are clamoring to get him into it. Whereas if we think about, I always try to keep in my head like the pendulum, and here's your side and here's his side. And even though it's your idea, you're still reaching and grasping for straws at how to pull him in. At a certain point, just stop and just pretend like you're asleep. Do something really unexpected and see what happens. Because if you disengage, and he knows Legos is not an option because that's his choice and that's away somewhere, because he might just wander off and do Legos. But I know like John and many of the other kids, they want to play with you, but they really would rather prefer you do their idea. But if you one up them and you stop engaging, because he's pretty much knows you're going to keep working at it to engage him. But if you stop engaging him and fall asleep, he's going to be like, mommy, what are you doing? And they'd be like, oh, well, you were whining, so that was boring, so I fell asleep. And then start, oh, okay, are you ready to make the octopus train? And then he'll be like, okay, like he'll say something that will think that he thinks he's buying into it. And then you'll start, and then he'll start whining again and just be like, oh, and fall over again and be like, wake me up when you stop whining, and make him work at engaging you in that process. Because what he's trying to do is basically get you in, he's trying to still lead the play. Even though it's your idea, he's trying to lead the play. So you decide you're only going to come to like 60%. You're going to do a little bit more than your 50%, but you're going to stop at a certain point, and you're going to be like, no 6-year-old, 5-year-old, 7-year-old would do more work than this. And you're already doing more work than they would do. So then you just hard stop and like start playing with your shoe or doing something that completely disengages you, so he has to come back and try to engage you. Do you think he would do that, or do you think he would not do that?
So I think I kind of did that actually today, because I was so frustrated. Like when I said I kind of finally gave up, I'm like, okay, John, I'm done with this. Like I actually literally went down to the couch and like laid down because I was having like
Good. And it's frustrating. You are like, that is fair to show him that you're frustrated, to fake it.
And then, I mean, then he came and, oh, mommy, I'm sorry. I want to be flexible. And then, would you want to kiss? Like he then like tried to appease me. And he did. And I was like, oh, John, yes, I'm upset because like you weren't playing with me. So we kind of had that exchange, and then we kind of went back to it. But then again, like once we're back in the play, like I think he's motivated enough to kind of come give me a kiss and say like he wants to be flexible, but it doesn't really change then how he plays. To your point, like he kind of goes back to the whining once we're
yeah,
kind
but you could play that. So you know now that he will re-engage you. So you have to play that up a lot. So
okay.
in the play, so he got you back, but he's always going to go back to that. He knows once he has you back that if he starts whining, you're going to start working harder to get him. I mean, that's what he thinks, but you want to switch that table on him and not do that. So every time he starts whining or doing like the straight track, just make it funny. Like, and if nothing else, you're going to get a funny engagement out of him. Every time he starts to do the straight track, fall over and fall asleep. And then he's going to be like, mommy. And you can be like, oh, you want to play with me? And then he'll start, and then you'll be like, okay. So and this is when you would use a whiteboard. So my other idea, and I'm sure many of you use this, but put it on a visual of what your idea is. And I'm sure Megan and Jenny said to do this too, but put it on a visual of your idea and his idea. And go back to every time you wake up, he re-engages you and you wake up, you're going to go back to the whiteboard and be like, wait a minute, let's remember, what are we doing? Okay, we're doing my idea right now, and my idea is trains. And remind him of that. So give him the visual of octopus trains and draw it out. Because he may not, if you just said octopus tracks, like in my head, I don't actually know what you mean. I mean, I'm sure it is great, but I don't know does he know what that looks like visually?
Yeah, there's an actual visual that the teachers had provided. Like this was, I think, a couple days ago. Yeah, there's like an actual visual.
So then I would just show him the visual and be like, okay, so remember, we're doing my idea.
Yeah.
And my idea is octopus train. And he's gonna be like, okay, mommy, I'm gonna do it. And then he'll get back into it, and his brain, you just have to retrain his brain over and over again. And like the not gold, like the objective you're working on is repairing breakdowns. So every time he is doing his own idea during your idea, he is breaking down the interaction. So what you're first doing is highlighting the breakdown by walking over to the couch, or by pretending you're asleep, or by saying, oh man, and just disengaging. So that's the like highlight that he has broken the interaction. And then what you want to do is teach him how to repair that interaction, which he did step one of by coming over to get you, but he has to then re-engage in the reciprocal interaction, which is where he's still failing. So you want to keep working on that piece. And every time he goes to his own idea, which is so just every one of our kids' ingrained thoughts, is when you want to stop again and remind him wait, you're doing my idea now. And, but not saying it that way, because then he's going to turn it into a headbutting moment and
Mm-hmm.
just fall asleep until he comes over like he did and says, okay, I'm going to be flexible. And you're like, oh, okay, so you're ready to do my idea. So what idea are we doing? And then what's hilarious is some kids will be like, we're doing Legos. And you're like, no, my idea was trains. And it's like they want to do your idea, but in their head, their visual is still their idea. So you want to visually say it and make them verbally say it.
Okay, that's really helpful. I think I kind of did like, I
You
also
did.
did step one today, but
Yes.
it sounds like you're saying just go with it and play with it. Okay, that's helpful.
Yes, but the biggest thing, the huge success is you know he wants you to play because he came over to get you. If you, that means you're doing the right thing. You just need to like essentially train him better. He wants you to play with him. If he didn't really want you to play, he would have sat and done the long track. He could have done that without you, but he came to get you. So really what you want to remind yourself in your head is he is playing you when he's whining. And he doesn't, he's whining to get you to work harder at him. And that you want to keep reminding yourself that that don't let him play you essentially.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just to one addition to that, that is he's also learning how to deal with us during the day as well. And then
Yes.
he's really like testing the waters and then how he can get us to do stuff that he wants us to do.
Yes.
And like that whining thing actually is like kind of like really like the he's like, okay, can I stretch them a little bit more longer, or can I get them done things that like I want them to do, like kind of behavior. I can see from his eyes that like he's really faking it, like really, like he's not really whining, he's faking and then looking at us and make sure that like we are doing something like he does. If we don't do it, and then he changes the behavior a little bit. So he's testing the water right now.
Well, and to be fair, as a parent, whining is, for me, maybe not for you, you guys probably have more patience, it's incredibly annoying. So he
It
probably has, yes, he's probably figured out that when I scream, they're going to hold their own. But when I whine, they may cave, or my child would say that. And so what you want to do is every time he whines, completely disengage from him. Don't give into it. Don't work harder. Completely disengage and be like, oh, and go and do something else. And be like, you know what? Come back when, like, my daughter does a baby voice, and it literally can send my husband and I into like 0 to 60 in 5 seconds, because it's a baby voice that she, I don't know, whatever, it's the same as whining. And we now just completely walk away from her and are like, when you can talk like a 6-year-old, come back to us. And she has learned, because it's all this being home, they're going to play every trick in the book. And luckily, thank goodness, we're like, she's using less of it now, because I think she wants just us to baby her now that we're home all the time.
I mean, we are seeing very similar one too. Like he changes his voice level to like a baby talk, and like actually like he's imitating one of his friends. And then like we do the same thing nowadays. Like we're trying to ignore it, and
Yes.
yeah, very similar. And
Oh,
also
wait,
like
what? Say it again.
and also like you can see that like for example, like if you react him, John, can you please be flexible? I think you are having a stuck thinking right now, right? Like you're using the language that like we learned from you guys. And
Yeah.
he's like, I want to, like, you know, like he's like, I want to be flexible, but
Yes.
I can't right now. Like, or can you be nice to us? I want to, but he doesn't, like at that moment, because like all these things are rushing into his body, and also like he wants to do what he wants to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that I want to be flexible, you can work with, because you can say, okay, so here's the 2 options, or okay, you know, if he's whining, he doesn't want to come to dinner or whatever. But you can say, okay, well, we have to do that. Like, at least if he can talk to you, like in the, I want to be flexible, you can say, okay, here's our options. But when he goes into the whine or the baby talk, that's him wanting you to work harder at it. So that's when I would disengage and walk away from him and almost like just turn your back to it and wait for him to engage you again. And when he engages you again as John, not whiny, not baby talk, then you're going to have a conversation with him. because he does want to do it. I think he or lots of kids are just playing with what's going to get the most attention right now. And I think it's hard for you guys, for me with my kids, like I can't give them attention all the time. I'm doing multiple things. So they have to figure out when is the time they can get attention and when is the time that they're going to try to get attention, but it's not going to work. So some of those, when they're trying to engage, but I would go with the disengaging until he's using his regular voice, his regular engagement. And you can say, you can go and do this and this, and then come back to me when you're ready.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll try. We have a full day with him tomorrow, no nanny, so we'll definitely try.
Oh, is your nanny out or just, it's just today?
For tomorrow, just for tomorrow.
Oh, okay. So you have a lot of time.
Yes.
I mean, the one thing I was going to say, well, I mean, there's multiple things about behaviors, but just like this, a perfect way to kind of encapsulate just that example of whining, an incredibly annoying behavior. But what I like to look at is our kids, and one of the parent calls I did, whatever, 2 weeks ago, we were talking about like, what is a behavior and what should I do to consequence my child's behavior? Let's look at behaviors as what is their means of communication? What is a child trying to communicate? Of course, there's always something you can consequence, but like just with that behavior of John, if we consequence whining and we say, if you whine, you're not going to get dessert. Well, then whining is going to turn into baby talk, or whining is going to turn into a fall down tantrum, because what we haven't figured out is if we're just saying no, 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 is we haven't figured out what's underlying the reason of the whining or the baby talk or the tantrum or the hitting or the pushing. And it's not always that easy, obviously, to figure out what is the underlying source of a behavior. But if we can try to understand first what a child is trying, every behavior only continues if a child's getting something out of it and there's something that they're gaining from that behavior. So the one time a child tantrums in a store and actually gets that candy or gets the toy or whatever, because you don't want a tantruming child in a store, guaranteed that child is going to tantrum in the store the next 10 times, because they know the one time they did tantrum, they gained it's called like the negative reinforcement. They were reinforced for their negative behavior. So what we would rather do is figure out why a child is doing a behavior and looking at it from the like bottom up approach, rather than trying to clamp down on a behavior, because every time you clamp down on a behavior, it's going to spew in some other direction. So for many, many behaviors, the way we look at it in our school, one of the families I was doing, we were having this conversation about how does Fuse look at behaviors, because we have all these behaviors that are kind of spewing in different directions now that we're home with our kids all the time. And I would say, first and foremost, we don't look at a behavior. We look at what is the cause of the behavior. We look at what are the underlying obstacles that are creating the behavior, rather than just looking at the behavior for what it is. So let's say a child, I don't even know if this family is on, but a child at a certain point at the beginning of the year was standing on top of the tables. And this is a little guy, like 3, 4, just learning to play. And so what we looked at was, okay, so he would just randomly during morning choice time go and stand on top of a table. Now, it would have been very easy for us to consequence that behavior and say to the little friend, you may not stand on the table, you may not stand on the table, and just chase him around and say, you may not stand on the table. But what have we done in that moment? We haven't actually, one, figured out why he was standing on the table, nor have we told him what he can do in that moment. So what we did was we observed it for a week or so. The teachers observed it. And what they saw was every time he would come in the morning, he was really starting to be interested in play, but he did not know how to engage in play. So what he would do, and this is, we were observing, like I was observing it, not really, I mean, teachers knew we were observing it, but I was like, do nothing different. So what was happening was came in the classroom all excited, super excited, and was looking around for something to do, someone to play with, and he didn't really know how to engage, and he wasn't a great player yet. So he would stand on the table. So then what the teacher would do was go over and say, I see you're standing on the table, and they would redirect him, and they would go and read up with him, or they would go and help him get into play. So and that was the perfectly acceptable, like it was working. So they would go and get him off the table, and they would go redirect the play, but he was still standing on the table. And what we realized was him standing on the table was actually just him communicating, I need help with how to play, because one or two times the teacher would redirect him because they weren't really looking at it as a bad behavior. He wasn't doing it to be unsafe. They were redirecting him and bringing him back, and then they were engaging him in play. So what he realized totally subconsciously, unconsciously, was he was getting support for entering play by standing on the table. So what we had to back up and realize was the table was not necessarily a negative behavior, but his way of communicating, I need help. So then what we did is the minute he came in, we would give him choices of what to play initially to try to eliminate the standing on the table. We would give him choices of, you can play in Play-Doh or you can play at the kitchen. And we would walk him over and engage in play. And all we had to do was that for 3 or 4 days. And then he learned that he would walk up to the teacher and say, what can I play? And then we had replaced the negative behavior with a positive behavior, because we understood the communicative reason for why he was standing on the behavior, or why he was standing on the table. So that's a super simple example. But in that moment, the teachers are like, why the heck is he standing on the table? This seems so weird. But it's almost like you have to take a step back, or like Ipek was saying, like Mustafa may have a different opinion because he was looking at the play. You almost have to take a bird's eye view of what's happening to try to interpret what a child is getting out of that behavior. Similar to like kids stand in line. Every time kids stand in line, the same child pushes, the same child pushes, the same child pushes. Well, in that moment, then I have the Mila OT bird's eye view of, yeah, because you're putting that child in the middle of the line, and they have a lot of tactile defensiveness and a lot of OT, like motor planning issues. So when you put them in the middle of the line, it turns into the fight or flight for them, because they're getting encroached upon by other kids. So their response to that is to push. They're not trying to be mean, but they go into fight and they push away because they see all these kids encroaching them, and it makes them incredibly anxious. So I feel like there are many ways that behaviors become a habitual response over behaviors being the thing we need to target. Rather, we need to come in and replace the behavior with something more proactive or appropriate for our kids. And does anyone else have an example of something that they're noticing now or had noticed that I can kind of unravel as to what, I mean, not that I have a easy answer, but we can kind of unravel together to figure out like what the underlying, as in the behavior world, it's like the ABCs, the antecedents, behaviors, and the consequences. So like the table example, the antecedent that we learned was he was very unsure of how to engage and initiate and play. The behavior was standing on the table. The consequence initially was he actually got rewarded by standing on the table because a teacher would help him learn to play. So we flipped it. But that's kind of how you look at a behavior, is look at what is the precursor, what is the behavior, and then what is happening that we need to change the system on.
I mean, I have one, but it's really hard. I think it's like, it's not a softball, Lauren.
That's okay, whatever. I'll just leave the meeting if I don't like it. So
you'll just pretend you're falling asleep.
Exactly. Some other parent will probably have done the same thing and have a great idea.
So Ronan will, like, I'll ask him, or I'll say, oh, it's time to do whatever. And he'll be like, I don't want to, he'll just get really upset and say the opposite of what it is. Oh, I think you froze. Hold on.
Like it's time to go brush teeth. What?
I think we just froze briefly. Sorry.
Oh, now I can hear you.
You can hear me now?
Can you hear me?
Kind of, yeah.
Can
Yeah,
hear
so,
you.
okay. Yeah, so basically, he'll say,
So
I
I
want,
said, do you like
he'll often say, I want what I don't want. Can I have what I don't want? And I think
this is like the
that's,
raspberry strawberries example?
yeah, it's like worse than that though, because it's some, like just that angst, the angst of like, oh, I want what I don't want. It really throws me for a loop because I know that I know he wants to do one thing, but it's almost like he just gets really upset.
What something today that what Zoom?
I think the interwebs are breaking down on this
Suzanne,
end. I can barely hear you.
they don't want. Oh, you can.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Oh, or is it? Oh, is it me? Okay, so let's try it again. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
I can now, yeah.
Okay, maybe it's me. I have no idea.
It was you, Lauren. You were cutting off.
Oh, I am cutting off. Oh, I can go somewhere else if it's me.
No, the thing is that actually, like today, that happened to me, like with the work stuff as well. So I think it's a bandwidth issue too. Like if everybody turns their videos, cameras off, but that would work much better.
Oh, so I have all my Wi-Fi bars.
Now you're
Okay.
much better, actually. You're not cutting off right now.
I am not cutting off.
Yeah, I
Okay.
can hear you too.
Oh, that's very weird. Okay. Okay, so let's try it again. Okay, so Suzanne, give me an example that might, maybe just more specific example so I can break it down.
Yeah, so if I said to him, okay, now we're going to I'm trying to it's so hard. Yeah, like say it's time to have like he has 6 snacks for every meal.
Yeah.
I don't need to explain all this to everybody. I apologize, but so yeah, so say I know he wants the 6 snacks. There's no doubt about it that he wants the 6. But when it comes for number 6, I'll say, okay, this is number 6. He says, I want 5 snacks. I only want 5. And then I'll say, okay, knowing full well. And he'll say, but I do want 6. I do want 6. And he'll say, I want what I don't. Well, can I have what I don't want? Like
What if you played that? So Karen, when we kind of talked about it with Karen, she was like, oh, it's so tough to have what you don't, or what, oh, it's so tough to not get what you want or get what you don't want.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Is
mean, I do talk to him about that, and I did also write, draw on the whiteboard, like a picture of me and a picture of him, and in his speech bubble, he says, I want 5 snacks, and in my thought bubble, I think Ronan wants 5, and he got really into that for a few days. And I do think I can still kind of work on that, because I do tell him, like, when you say that you want 5, people think you want 5.
and does he get that from like a cognitive standpoint?
Yeah. But and then I take it further sometimes when I get frustrated, and I try to have a very like level voice, but I'll say, when you say what you don't want, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get what you don't want. And then that's when sometimes he'll say, can I have what I don't want? And I'm like, I don't know how to answer that
So what
question.
if you say, yes, you can have what you want?
Yeah.
Have 5 snacks. And I mean, you could say yes, but I feel like you're going to get really sad if
Yeah.
I wonder if he's anxious because he knows you're kind of pushing the limits on so many things right now. Is he
Yeah.
anxious that you're going to give him what he doesn't want because in essence you are trying to push those limits?
Yeah, maybe. And maybe it's the way we're all feeling right now, right? Like, we're not getting
Yeah,
what we want. We're not,
right. Can I have what I don't want? Like, nobody is getting what they want. Like, literally, it's like you wake up on Monday and it's like, here's another week of what we don't want. Like,
Exactly.
it's nothing. And I feel like as a parent, we kind of have to like suck it up and like, oh my God, it's Monday and we have to do this. And it like, so I wonder if what he's trying to say is it like him saying, can I have what we don't want? Is it really him saying like I have to deal with what I don't want? Like,
Yeah, maybe.
yes, there has to be some book about like, you don't always get what you want. Like, the
Right.
Rolling Stones song, like, you don't always get what you want. And you can be mad about it. You can
Yeah.
be mad that you don't always get what you want. Like maybe we haven't flipped it on him in talking about the feelings around what your feelings are when you don't get what you want.
Yeah, and he does ask me a fair amount. He'll say, when you were a kid, tell me about one thing that you didn't get when you were a kid. And I make up, at this point, I'm making up stories about wanting a blue bicycle and getting a red one,
Yeah.
because I'm running out of but so we do talk about that, and he's really fascinated by it.
So I think he's
He's
fast.
practicing it, right?
Yes. And I really truly think he's fascinated by choices. I mean, he's fascinated by in one realm, he's fascinated by his own rigidity, right? Like it's very curious to him, almost like why he's rigid. And like with the whole 6 snacks, you tried to play the 6 snacks, but that didn't work. So now he's like circling about it. Like, I want 5 snacks, but really I want 6 snacks. And so there's a part of him that's intrigued about it in general. And so I wonder if you talk about, not in the heat of the moment, not during the 6 snacks, but like
Right.
make up story, like write down a story about when I was little, I wanted the blue bike and I got the red bike and I was so mad. But then I realized red is really cool and
Yeah.
like whatever. And then maybe the next, he gets to write a story, not about himself, but about like, let's pretend that some stuffed animal gets something they don't want. Like turn it into like a storytelling thing and see if, because I think he is fascinated by his own reactions and his own choices and how he's playing these little rigid moments in his head. And
Yeah.
so maybe you just play it, and come up with like the strategy books or the story books or something. Or there's got to be a ton of kids books around whatever. Billy asked for a bear and he got a rabbit stuffed animal, and like
Right.
how you get like that you get mad or whatever.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah, and I think also just the issue of control, you know, he's just wants to be the one to make, you know,
yes,
like he had such a hard time peeing at school,
yes,
for instance, you know, and he just really tried to just not do it. He wanted to be the one to do all that. And so we're constantly working on that kind of thing too.
yes. And those are things that they don't come fast for him. Like it's the slow progression.
Yeah.
And then once he does it, he's proud of it. So you could go backwards in time and say, like, remember when you didn't want to pee at Fuse, or when you didn't want to use
Yeah.
the girls' bathroom or whatever? Like, there's so many of those. You could make a whole like rolling scroll in your house of like didn't want
Yeah.
and want.
Yeah.
And maybe you make that, like some people are doing the flexibility chain. You could do that as a chain, and when it, you know, goes across your wall, then that's when you have like the don't want party or something, you know, like maybe you play up his play on words in a way,
Yeah.
because he keeps doing it. So I think you go for the, can you have what you don't want? Yes, you can, but I remember when I didn't get the bike I wanted, it made me sad. Do you think if you got 5 snacks right now, how are you going to feel? Are you going to be
Yeah.
like I was when I didn't get the bike? Or are you going to be like you were when you didn't get the whatever? And see if he can just talk about it, and then say, so how many snacks do you want?
Right.
And maybe he'll still say 5, but it'd be interesting if you took it away from that situation in that moment and talked about a feeling. And because again, like, I don't know, it's a super annoying behavior, but I actually think it's communicating something much grander for him. He just
Yeah, I
doesn't know how
agree.
to communicate it right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I
And
think you're
the
right.
anxiety around, you know, there's like we were talking about last week of Ansh who doesn't want to join the circle time because it's so kind of like emotion filled. And then you made the great comment of like, I feel just like Ansh, which is so true. And then Karen and I were talking about that later on a different call of like, yes, as adults, we don't like this situation, and we're expecting our kids to like deal. And we have all these coping skills, and I
Right.
have none, and they just are so expected to roll with it. Whereas when
Right.
they were at Fuse, we were like therapeutically holding them at every step, and now we're not. And so I think he's trying to say in a grander way, like, I didn't get to choose this, but I have to do
Yeah.
it. So I'm going to
Yeah.
tell you I don't want 5, but I want 6, but I really want 5, because he's just, I don't know, like something about control or something about all of it kind of is like, how can he get a say in this?
Yeah. Maybe when he's 20, he'll be writing poems about
Yeah.
existentialism.
I mean, yes, I think he has these like thoughts beyond his years, and they're like bigger than his head. So many of our kids do, and they're bigger than their heads can process, and they
Yeah.
make you crazy because you're trying to help him, but his thoughts are too big for what his brain can like cognitively process right now.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah, it's not an answer, but
No,
I mean, it's worth a try.
it's all this stuff is worth a try.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Because I'm at the point where I'm just like, you know, I'm out of ideas.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. And you, at least it gives you try for Tuesday. Like it gives you another plan, and that at least
Absolutely.
you're doing
Absolutely.
okay. Other tricky things that are happening with kids. I think a lot of times, kind of like Ronan's doing, our kids' language doesn't always mimic what their thought process is, but what they're communicating. It's like we have to, as parents, teachers, whatever, we have to be the detectives and kind of get underneath it. The language is communicating something, but it's definitely not always very easy to ascertain what it's communicating. And we kind of have to feel it out. But I think our kids right now, especially, always communication is giving us something. Their behaviors and their communication are giving us something, and we have to try to not look at it from a surface level, but go at it like almost from the underground of like, okay, he's saying this, but let's think about what has happened previously, or we know that he gets anxious about this or that, and trying to look at what that little behavior or what that communication might be trying to say, not looking at it at the face value of changing it. Because if we tried to change their words, that's not going to help alleviate what the underlying feeling we're trying to get at is. So trying to figure out what that underlying feeling is so important for these kids.
Lauren, I have a question. So I guess my question is not so much about what the communication of the behavior is, and maybe it is, I don't know. But let's say behavior is, so something that has happened in the past for us is Arya asks for something to eat, and I give him whatever that, I think it's appropriate for that time of the day to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And then he'll, sometimes he'll say he doesn't want it, he wants something else. Sometimes he'll just throw the plate. And
Because he doesn't want it, essentially.
it's because that's not what he wants. Yes.
Okay.
So I've started, and this doesn't happen all the time, but every once in a while. So I know that, I'm supposed to model the language for him so that he uses his words instead of doing this. But sometimes it's the only option available, and I don't really want to give him something else, even if he says he wants something else. So what I guess I'm wondering if the consequence of, or what I'm doing after is the right thing. Is punishment, what I'm wondering is if it's a good choice, like making him clean up because he did that. You know what I mean?
Okay, so I want to make sure I get the behavior right. So is this equivalent to like when at school he would say he wanted the water bottle, but then we'd give him the water bottle and he would throw the water bottle?
Well, I think that's different because he asks for it to throw it. Like he has that intention to throw it, to say he's mad.
Yes.
This is just simply saying, I don't want this. But instead of just saying, I don't want it and leaving it, he throws it.
Okay, so he hasn't, so he has asked for something, but you don't think that's appropriate. Like if he asks for a cookie.
Not necessarily. He just comes and says, I want a snack. And I'll give him, what I think is the right thing for him to eat. Or he'll come and say, I'm hungry, and it's dinner time, and I'm giving him dinner, but he doesn't want dinner. He wants, cookie or whatever it is that he has in mind. And that's what happens.
And so not as of when you were consequencing it, let's say like at a certain point when he threw it, what would happen? What previously used to happen?
Probably before, so I probably would clean up and then give him something else at some point. But these days I'm not. I'm saying to him, this is the only option you have.
Okay, so and it's like not a judgment. I just want to. So there was a time when he would throw it, you would clean it up and give him an alternative option.
Yeah, I think so. Yes,
okay.
Probably there was a time. Yeah, that I did.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, like I'll do it. So then I think Arya they have their A plus B equals C. So he knows that in the past, it's kind of like the kid who tantrums in the store and gets the toy to keep him quiet so the parents can continue doing whatever. At a certain time, he was given something he didn't like, he threw it, and then he ended up getting an alternative to that option. So his throwing it is now not actually him being like mean. It's he maybe like whatever 6 months ago when he had less language or whatever, it got him what he wanted. So he's going to go back to that. And so I think now Arya has the language and he absolutely can refrain from throwing the plate to get what he wants. So I would not look at it as a punishment. That is a natural consequence. You can say before you put it on. So a punishment is when you're going to say, go sit in the corner for throwing the plate. But what you're actually doing now, or what I would recommend you doing, is the natural consequence is he has to clean up the plate, like you were saying, and then the question would be, which we can talk about in a second, what the alternative option is going to be for him. But what I would do as a preview is say, oh, Arya, you said you were hungry. So I'm thinking that you're going to have carrots and cucumbers. And you can say, I know you may be, like, if he gets a choice, I would set it up previous to handing him the plate. And if you want to give him a choice, then you set it up previous to handing him the plate. If you do not want to give him a choice and the option is carrots, then I would say, Arya, I hear that you're hungry. So I am thinking a really good snack for you right now is carrots. And then as you're about to hand him the plate, but if you have a different idea, just tell me with your words. And so you're setting it up for him. Remember, if you don't like what I give you, we can talk about it, but throwing your plate, not an option. And then you would have to clean it up and then you don't get a snack or whatever your thought is. So I would set it up ahead of time so he knows very clearly what is expected of him. Just like at school for snack and lunch, the teachers will say, okay, we're going to get out our lunches. And remember, if you don't like what mom packs, you can write mom a note, or you can, like, there's an A and a B. Instead of a kid opening up their lunch and all of a sudden screaming in hysterics, like, I didn't want a sandwich, whatever. They know what their options are. If they are about to get upset about something, they don't throw it. They can tell a teacher that they want to write mom a note, or they can, I mean, at school, there's not a lot of options, but there's always an option of what they can do if they're not happy with their food. So giving him an option of, if you don't like this as a choice, remember, we try it, and then you can ask for X or Y or something like that. So previewing it is huge, so he knows what you expect. And then if you hand it to him and he throws it, then you turn into like a stone face, not getting mad at him because he knows it's a natural consequence. And you can just say, Arya, when you throw your food, you need to clean it up. And then he may get mad and he may try to hit you or whatever, but you can say, you know what, you threw your food, so you need to clean it up. And then you do the hand over hand and you have him clean it up, and then he goes back to the table. And then, I mean, obviously you want him to eat, but he doesn't then get to choose what he eats. You would then say, okay, well, now I'm going to get you more of those carrots or whatever you threw, and you can try those carrots, and then mommy will give you another option or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
So is he, when he throws it and he does clean it up, is he doing that good for you? Like, will he clean it up for you? Or he gets really upset?
Yeah, no, initially he was getting very upset. Now I see more and more he's realizing that he doesn't have a choice, so he'll clean it up.
And are you seeing him less of the time throwing it?
Yes.
So that is just like just like I was talking about with EPEG with John. He's getting it. He's getting what is expected. You just have to be that much more consistent with him. You have to every time make him clean it up, and never giving him the higher preferred food if he throws the plate. If he says, I don't like this, I want yogurt, then you can give him the higher preferred food. But if he throws it, he never gets the higher preferred food, because then he's going to learn the pattern of, oh, I throw it, I clean it up, and then I get the higher preferred food. Okay, great. That's easy. Right. And so you want to eliminate that every behavior, if it's going to be reinforced, even a negative behavior, if it's reinforced, it still becomes a behavior that's going to continue. So you want to always get, that's basically your consequence, is he doesn't get what he desires if he does the negative behavior.
Right. Yep. Makes sense. Okay.
And I would always preview, you could do a lot of Karen's replays around it. Like, okay, so when I hand this to you, do we throw our food? No, like, and he'll say before he gets it, no, we do not throw our food. And you can be like, remember, you're not, what we can do when you get your food is say, mommy, I want whatever. And for a little while, you're going to have to give in to him and give him something. I mean, in a relative speaking, if it's appropriate, you're going to give him what he wants so that he learns to use his language over using his actions.
Right. Yep.
And that's the thing, like, especially because you're home, you could do a lot of the Karen's replay stuff of like pretend play. And it could be someone's birthday party and some kid, you put the cake in front of them and then the kid's like, I hate cake, and throws it. And then the birthday person is like, we don't throw our food, you know, like play it out in that way so that he sees that when you throw your food, you have to go clean it up and then you don't get what you want.
Yep.
Something like that.
Yep. Makes sense.
Other behaviors to kind of think through as, and again, like each of these examples, it's behaviors that are incredibly frustrating for parents, but I would say each one of these behaviors on face value look very behavioral, but on another level, they're behaviors to communicate something else. It's just our kids are not great communicators. The other piece about that, Milo might say that there's a sensory component of whatever the food, like if you gave him, I don't know, some food that is he has a sensory aversion to, you have to think about it from like all of those levels of what are we expecting of our kids and what is what we're expecting attainable for our kids. Like even going back to the trains with John earlier, I think he can do this, but for another kid that's 3, can they like visually planning, make an octopus track? Maybe, maybe not. Some kids can't visually organize themselves in that way. So we have to think about from all of those like pieces of the pie that we were looking at in the slides on other days, you have to really think about like what is attainable for your kid and what they're going to be successful with before we think about, but that's all the pre-steps and the scaffolding. And there's a lot of times where the teachers or myself will start something and then we have to own that it was an epic fail because our expectations were much higher than the skill level of the kids that we have. And that can be a very big discrimination between if teachers set up some like amazing whatever Easter basket activity, but it takes weaving, and that for our kids fine motor wise is really hard to weave paper in and amongst each other. And then all the kids start having all these behavioral moments. Are they really behavioral moments? No, the teacher set up an activity that the kids didn't feel competent with. So then when any situation, when a child doesn't feel confident in their skills and it doesn't feel competent in what their capabilities are, a behavior is going to be elicited because it's much easier to start ripping up the paper and throwing it around the room than it is to try to weave like construction paper and not feel successful with it, because no child wants to be they don't want to fail at an activity. So ripping up the paper and throwing it around the room and getting a laugh out of another kid, that's a guaranteed win. But on face value, that could be looked at as a very disruptive behavior. But if you really look at it from like the bottom up, it's that we set them up for an activity that was too difficult. So a lot of times, especially when you're home, thinking about the activity and how you're presenting it and what your child's capabilities and obstacles are, that really guides how you set them up for different activities. And they're going to either buy in. If they feel successful, they're going to buy in. If they all of a sudden look at it and think, I don't think I'm going to be good at it, you're going to get a very lower buy-in, and then you're going to see a lot more behaviors elicited from that activity. So it's always about like understanding what your child's capabilities are and setting up the activity for success in that way.
Lauren, can I ask a follow-up question on that? Like, can you maybe give some tips in terms of like being able to discriminate between, like they're not doing it because they're like not interested, it's not their preferred thing, so like they're trying to escape basically, versus like they're truly not able to do it? Like I personally sometimes have a hard time like differentiating between the two. And I guess that's my first question. The second question is, to like how can we think about, I guess, like pushing them, right, like appropriately, and having them expand their stuff, like in terms of like the trade-off of then like having them feel successful? Because like what happens with John is like maybe like there's going to be 1 or 2 times like where he might not feel entirely successful, but then like he learns it and then like he feels successful. So it does take like a couple, I guess, failures and or stressful moments or whatever until we kind of get to a place where he actually enjoys. Like Legos is the biggest example. Initially it was such a struggle to like sit him down. Now like he does like 1 Lego a day. So like, so I guess I'm just like wondering, I guess, how to differentiate ability versus engagement, and then 2, like how best to keep pushing them while not having them feel successful.
Yes. So oh, hold on. What? No, put your pajamas on. Bye. Okay, fine. Go talk to daddy. Sorry. So I think what you said around he fails a couple times and then he is successful is the key to it, because yes, that is going to happen with so many things. Our kids, nothing is super easy for a lot of our kids, but we build up their feelings of success. It's like I was giving the example of like the toddler learning to walk. It's going to be a fail. It's going to be a fail. And then all of a sudden the pieces are going to come together and they're going to do it. I would say it's a very fine line between motivation and competence. Or wait, yeah, it's a very fine line. Like when you're looking at what are they motivated to do an activity versus do they feel competent in it, right? That was kind of the beginning question.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Motivation versus competent.
Yes.
I would say kids, the competence leads to motivate. Like, hold on for 1 second. Okay. Sorry, now I'm distracted. Kids are, our job, or like, I'll think about it from school and then I'll get to your answer. Our job is to build their competence. And when their confidence and competence are built, the motivation comes. So like your Lego example. Initially, John did not feel motivated to do Legos, but you built it up. So I assume what you did was started small and did little Lego things that he did feel confident with, and then moved on to now he probably does more complex ones. So it's all about breaking it down in really small ways so that he does feel confident, and then making it more complex for him. So that, I would say, starting really small with any activity. So anything that he's not motivated with, really the answer is I want him to be motivated to engage with you or Mustafa rather than the activity. So like he wasn't motivated with trains, he wanted to do Legos, but was he motivated to get you when you fell asleep? Yes, because I want his goal to be you, not the activity. So it's really about starting small and building up so that you're building up his confidence and you're building up his ability and his desire to want to try things that are not within his wheelhouse. What was the part 2 of your question? I think that was getting to the part two was,
I mean, I guess you're saying, I guess you answered the second part, which is like, how do we push them while also like being mindful of their kind of anxieties and limitations. So I think you answered that, like start small and build up. I think the first one was more like, how do you differentiate? Are there any tips in terms of being able to differentiate, like whether it's a competency issue or it's a, like, I guess, kind of
Okay.
motivation issue? Like take the octopus thing. Like I personally think he can do it, but maybe there's something that I'm not realizing and he actually is not able to do it. So how
I'm
to like
actually not
try to
sure. Oh,
judge.
right. I'm actually not sure from a motor planning standpoint that he could do that. So, I mean, I don't know. He may very well be able to do that. But what I would do is start simpler and say, so as you start into the straight tracks, then maybe say in your head, okay, he wants to do straight tracks, I want to do the octopus, but maybe the octopus thing is hard for him. So don't go for the straight tracks, but go simpler to build his, is that, did I lose you?
Yeah, you're kind of breaking up
you
a
hear
little
me?
bit. Yeah, I can hear you intermittently. I guess,
Okay.
yeah.
Maybe I'll, hold on 1 second. I'm going to go downstairs because maybe me being upstairs is not, you're going to travel with me. Hold on. Well, I moved to upstairs tonight, but maybe it's giving me less. Okay, I'm going downstairs. You're staying up here. Okay, well, Daddy can help you. Okay, hold on. I think I get better reception downstairs. Okay.
I can hear you fine now. I don't know about others.
Okay, well, I saw that my thing. So here I am back in my regular spot. I would always start simpler than where we want to go because of what his capabilities are. So if you start to see that an activity is wavering in how much engagement he has, go a little bit simpler, whereas that is the antithesis of what we actually do. We need to actually go make the activity more exciting, or we make the activity what it's about, then we're making it about the product, not the process. So I would go simpler and make the engagement more than the activity at that point.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So there's not always a simple answer of like motivation versus like how do you know if it's motivation or capability? I would always assume that for our kids, because all of our kids have their own obstacles, whether it's language, sensory, attention, all of those, I would always assume there's an element of capability that's going to be hard for our kids, and that their motivation wavers depending on what their capability is. So in those moments, the more we can adhere to their success level, the more we're going to be able to build their motivation. Because if you think about like whatever, John feels really successful on the scooter, so he always likes to scooter, but he feels less successful on something else, so he wants to do that less. So they're always going to gear to something they feel successful with. And I think we have to make the activities simple enough that we buy them in with success, and then add elements that are a little bit more complex.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
And you can play with it because you can go simpler. And if that doesn't buy him in, then you know that's not like you can you can play with it in different ways of, you may think, oh, it's the motor planning of the octopus train. And so you turn it into, wait, you know what? Let's just make a circle and see if that buys him in. If that doesn't buy him in, that wasn't the issue. And then you need to go to something else or whatever. So you can play with different things. Other people have thoughts about behaviors? Before we end, I would love to hear, because you guys are all solid coming to these little, what are some things that you guys would love to talk about? What are, like, not from me, it could be from anyone if you want to hear more from Karen. Actually, to some of your point, you guys were talking about parent anxiety last week, and Karen and I both thought of the social worker that works in our space as well. Does a lot of parent counseling, or adult therapy. And so she is very happy and willing to do a talk on just adult anxiety during this time. So that was like another talk I was thinking about that we could do at this time, is have her come on and do similar to a Karen talk, but also one for adults and parents as well. Other topics, things that you guys would love to hear about?
Lauren, I would love to hear a little bit about like the different, I know like you have the wheel, like in terms of the various challenges, but like, for example, like when, like we just had like John's neuropsych, for example, like there are some, like, I guess what, like processing challenges or executive function challenges. And like some of these terms are a little bit hard to understand and differentiate. And I guess like thinking about them a little bit, understanding them a little bit more, and then like thinking of like strategies and suggestions for like how to work on them. I guess it's probably like, because obviously you already know those and like it's kind of built into the Fuse curriculum, but I think as parents, because we don't have that clinical, like to me, I would find that helpful.
So is the thought, or so there's processing speed and then there's executive functioning. So almost like what the operational definitions of those are and then how to work on them, or more just what they are?
It's both, yeah. I mean, I guess first what they are and also then how to work on them. Like I think I read, like obviously I can read them and understand like what's saying in Google or whatever, but sometimes like having examples is helpful. Like how do you differentiate, for example, a kid that has like an executive function challenge versus like a processing, I'm just making these up, right? And like I think it would help us can understand our kids overall better, and also better able to like interpret some of these like testing and other things that we're getting, and therefore I think just like overall contribute to their development. I would personally find that helpful.
So is it helpful to have like Carrie, who's a neuropsych, to come on and talk about the different domains, or more do it like real time, just talking about how we do it at Fuse? Other people can answer that too. I'd be curious what other people like. I mean, because didn't Carrie do John's neuropsych, or who did his?
No, we Dr. Castro.
Oh, right, okay. So is it helpful to, well, basically he gave you the overview. You more want like the nitty gritty of what to do with it.
Yeah, I guess like he gave the overview, and like we kind of got the scores and stuff. But yeah, like so when, like for example, when like one of the things, like I'll give an example for John, is like his like reasoning skills, right, are like, that's an area where he has challenges. Mm-hmm. Okay, so like what is kind of the best way to kind of help address that, right? Or like either from a point of like scaffolding, right, or like actual like exercises or tricks or whatever like we can do to like actually kind of strengthen that muscle.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe to your, I think I had mentioned this, you had mentioned this maybe in another call, like some of these things might not be necessarily like workable, right? Like, and they're just like limitations, and we kind of, anyway, so I'm not making that assumption, but I think just either how do we scaffold and support, or to your point, like to kind of work on them, like I would personally find that helpful.
Okay. Definitely executive functioning is easy. I mean, yes, that's a super easy one to do talks on. Processing speed is like very nebulous, but I can talk about how we work with that at Fuse too. So yes, those are kind of two different talks, but easy things to talk about. Other thoughts you guys have, Sahar, Suzanne, anybody else that you want to hear about?
I'm gonna have to think about it a little bit
Okay.
and get back to you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so, and it just let me know. You can email me or whatever, any ideas that you guys have that you want to hear about. Because we have hopefully not a lot of weeks of these nighttime talks, but we have some weeks of them, so we can talk about anything you guys want to.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you guys. Have a good night.
Thank you, Lauren. Have a good night.
Okay,
Thank you, Lauren.
bye-bye.
Have a good night.
Ipek, did you send me a time to talk about the IEP tomorrow?
Yes, 11. I said 11 if that works for you.
Yeah, that's fine. Do you want me to call your cell phone?
Okay, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
What are you doing still, though, is the question.